All right, hold on. And we are now live.
Well, good evening to everyone who's joining us either through our Royal Facebook page or the Royal Foundation North Charleston YouTube channel. We welcome you once again to our Wellness on Wednesday platform, where we share and discuss things that we hope will educate the community, but we're also looking forward to engaging the community with any questions you may have, particularly surrounding information and the facts regarding the COVID-19 vaccines that are available to some and becoming more available to many of us as the day goes on. But we are certainly glad to have all of you as a part of this platform, as a part of this conversation. And so with all those thoughts in mind, we certainly have a wealth of information we want to get to tonight. But let us begin our time together with a word of prayer. Shall we pray? Eternal God, how we thank you for this evening's gathering. We thank you, Lord, that with so much conversation going on, we gather in an area, in a space where we can hear information from those who are in the know, medically and spiritually, and from their own personal experiences. We thank you for those who are welcoming this conversation and ready to share so that others may be equipped and encouraged. And so we thank you, Lord, for all that you have done and all that you're going to do in this conversation and through our gathering tonight. Bless us as we share, bless us as we receive. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. So we are glad to receive any comments, any questions, especially as we continue to go further in the conversation. We want to make sure that everyone understands how to go about that. If you're looking at the screen, you should be able to see a Q&A box on the top of your screen. And if you would submit any questions that you have, our panelists will be able to see those questions. Only the panelists will be able to see any questions you have, and we will certainly have those who are able to respond to those and give you the answers that you're seeking. So please use that Q&A box at the top of your screen, and we certainly look forward to engaging you in this conversation this evening. And we're so glad to have with us as our moderator tonight, Brother Rajon Lewis Sr., who was born and raised in North Charleston, and he is a proud graduate of North Charleston High, as well as Trident Technical College and the College of Charleston. He is an educator, mentor, and a motivational speaker, and the executive director of Low Country Youth Services. He is also the host of the video podcast, Real Talk with Rajon, where he highlights local heroes and people who can bring critical knowledge to the community. So we are certainly glad and know that he is the right one to lead this discussion tonight as our moderator. So Brother Rajon, thank you for being here, and we turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Reverend Harris. I really appreciate it. And thank you to the entire Royal Missionary Baptist Church just for having, venues such as this to talk about such important issues so we'll be talking about tonight. I just want to go through and give my esteemed panelists, the opportunity to introduce themselves. I'm sure that the gentlemen on this line tonight are no strangers to not only speaking to large groups of people, but also to addressing these topics in a meaningful and substantive way. So I want to start off with Dr. Thaddeus J. Bell. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Well, first of all, I want to say how much I appreciate having the opportunity to share this platform with our esteemed guests. I'm Thaddeus John Bell. I'm a family physician practicing in North Charleston, essentially right down the street from Royal Church. I have been associated with the medical university most of my medical career, where I served as associate dean in the College of Medicine for issues of diversity. And then I was promoted to director of diversity for the entire university, a position which I held for nearly 10 years. And at the same time, I was associate professor of family medicine at MUSC. And so now I am in a private practice at MUSC. I'm sorry, in private practice in North Charleston, and I'm the founder of Closing the Gap in Health Disparities for African Americans and the Underserved, a program which is celebrating its 17th year of educating our community.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bell. I really appreciate you once again for joining us. Secondly, we're going to have the angel of the house, which is Royal Missionary Baptist Church, Pastor Isaac Holt. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, this is Pastor Holt here. I'm honored to be a part of this panel, and also grateful that there is a panel tonight concerning the subject that we are dealing with. I'm the pastor of the Royal Missionary Baptist Church here in North Charleston, beautiful Liberty Hill, from which our native and church member, Coach Earl Grant, just got sent to Boston College to be the head coach right here in Liberty Hill, North Charleston, South Carolina. I am the pastor. As far as I know, I haven't seen everybody together in a year. So you never know when people get together what they may be able to do. But as far as the last time we was together, I was the pastor, just jokingly. But you know, I come with I have to do that to keep myself somewhat humorous. Come with a heavy heart over this last year. I done no less than, I would say, 20 to 25 graveside services. And I would say about half of those have been results of COVID-19, the COVID-19 virus. And it leaves such a non-closure, if you have, from the church tradition of what we call homegoing. And it still leaves a void in all of those members and my relationship to those families in knowing what this virus is doing. So I applaud that tonight. And I'm glad we have someone who can really talk from it, from the front lines, in both ways of dealing with it and treating it. So I'm just happy to be here tonight.
Thank you so much, Pastor Holt. We really appreciate you. I just want to go ahead and make a side note that losing Coach Grant as a College of Charleston grad hurt my heart, but I'm always glad to see somebody from North Charleston do great. So shout out to Coach Earl Grant, and good luck at Boston College. I'm going to pass the microphone now to a man who really needs no introduction. He's known nationwide, worldwide, for his expertise and his ability to deliver the gospel in terms of gospel singing and in his life living. I'm going to give it up to award nominee and soon to be Stellar Award winner one of these days. I'm claiming it in the name of Jesus, Mr. Terrell Smalls.
Hey, thank you, man. I was looking around like who is he talking about? You know, Reverend Holt is a soon to be Stellar Grammy Dove nominated artist, especially because he just joked about not being the past that greatest. You know, I'm just playing. But no, man, thank y'all so much. You know, this platform is an amazing platform to be on because it's something that getting ready to be a year now and some months that I wouldn't have been afforded this opportunity. So to be able to be on the platform and not planted is just a great opportunity, man. And so I'm just honored to be here. Dr. Bell, Pastor Holt, thank y'all for extending this invitation. The royal family, my family, I love y'all so much. And also great meeting you, Rajan.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And, you know, we are definitely, you know, smiling and, you know, laughing and joking because as Pastor Holt said, it's been a rough year. You know, it's been roughly a year since, you know, the world really shut down. It's been a little over a year now since the world shut down. And, you know, life changed from the way we know it. COVID has really made an impact on a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And today we're going to be able to talk about that in a real substantive and meaningful way. And I'm excited about that discussion. And I think I want to start right there. I guess, and I'll start this as a round robin and then we can start getting to more direct questions. But how has life changed for you within the last year because of COVID? And I'll let anyone who wants to start that question off.
I guess Pastor Holt, you
There it is. Pastor Holt, take it.
chain of command.
You're muted. You're muted, Pastor Holt. There we go.
All right. First, I found myself, I was working out. I tried to focus on the good time, but then I would work out and then sit down. So the working out didn't match up with the too much sitting down. And I started dealing with a sciatic nerve situation, which is a problem from sitting down too much, because really wasn't nothing to do. And especially when you're used to being constantly active, that's the negative side of it. But the positive side of it, it put a pause in time to refocus, on you get closer to your spouse, you get closer to your children, you get closer to where you are and where you're going. And I tried to look at the positive, but it has really affected our congregation in that we are people that like to group up with chosen groupies. We are group people. We just like to see people. And I never knew how much I miss seeing people. Sometimes you think, man, I need to get away from people, but I really miss people, and people miss each other. And that has, and I don't even know what the after effects of that would be. I definitely don't think we'll ever go back to what was normal, because everybody is changed. And you don't know how much you changed personally. You see other people change, but we have changed. And I believe the church as a faith people has really a year not being in the building together when we were in there 4 or 5 times a week. And it has really caused, I'm praying, a more maturity of appreciating small things. I really appreciate small things now. Me and my wife went out to get something to eat yesterday for the first time in a year. And it was just a small thing that we used to take for granted. But it's taught me to appreciate what the old song say, you don't miss your water
Till the well run dry.
your well run dry.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Pastor Holt. Dr. Bell, for you, this last year, we're going to start looking back, and we're going to look forward. How's it been for you in the last year?
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity. Before I mention that, I want to let the congregation know that it was about 18 years ago when Pastor Holt and I did the first barbershop talk at Royal Baptist Church. And it was for men only, and we had an overwhelming crowd of men. And the reason that we had an overwhelming crowd of men is because the name of the talk was How to Improve Your Love Life. And
yes.
and the pastor gave a 20-minute sermon, which was off the chain. By the way, I still have the CD. I put it on a CD. Pastor, I'm going to have to share that with you because you'll get a great kick out of it. But I'm forever indebted that he joined me approximately 17 or 18 years ago to do the first barbershop talk, and it was done at Royal Baptist Church. But to your question, it has been a very challenging year for me as a physician. I must tell you that when I first heard about the virus, and I heard the reports of who the virus was affecting, at that point in time, I recognized that African Americans and the underserved were going to be tremendously affected, because I was already a student of the disparities and the lack of health care and all of the determinants of health And I had already been seeing that from my perspective. But when I heard that this virus was going to be affecting that group of people, I was devastated. Since 1 year, I'm very concerned that we are going to have a major dropout of healthcare professionals. I must remind people that we are not trained to deal with the devastation, the death rate, and all of the sadness. We are not trained to deal with that like we have been seeing it. People think that we are, but you know, I'm recalling when I was in medical school, I only maybe saw about two or three people actually die when I was in medical school. And then when I was in residency, I saw a little bit more. But I want you to imagine that we are having young doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals seeing people die and seeing them not being able to talk to their families, and never in their wildest dreams could they have imagined that they were going to have to deal with all of the sadness that they are having to deal with. So I'd like to thank my young colleagues, because it's really the young nurses and doctors who are on the front line. As a primary care doctor, I'm not on the front line. I see the results of the complications, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I'm really concerned. So keep our young doctors and our young nurses and our young healthcare professionals in your prayers, because they are going to need it. They are going to need it. And then finally, in my own practice, I have had several patients to pass away. You know, for me, my patients are my friends. Let me repeat that. My patients are my friends. When people come to see me, we develop a friendship. And so when something happens to one of them and they pass away, it gets to me. It really does. And so I've had a couple of my friends to pass away. And so, but I'm encouraged that in spite of all the tragedy, we do have something good on the other end of the rainbow, and that's this vaccine, which we're going to talk more about. So that's to kind of give you, to kind of let you know where I am right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for that great answer, you know, from so many different standpoints. Mr. Smalls, please tell us about this last year. What it's been like for you. I know you've had a unique journey through this last year, so please share.
Well, this last year has been a year to remember. I'm a young man, and so I don't have the years of, you know, talking and meeting with Pastor Holt and Dr. Bell at the first barbershop, you know, which is interesting to hear, but I would love to just, you know, hear that tape or VHS, wherever it is, during that time. But I tell you, this year, 2020, you know, so many things, and not to be repetitive, to go backwards, but of course we all know we're in a pandemic, and I thought that you know, me personally, I was doing everything right. I'm a germophobic, you know, and I don't know, I'll segue into my testimony, but it's been rough, you know. It's been a learning experience. I've never been so taught ever in my life. You know, I can remember first grade. I can remember my senior year. I can remember, you know, different studies and getting prepared, even to know how to go in the studio to perform. And I can remember being trained to preach. But this type of training is only experienced. You have to have lived through it and been in it. And so, just from an artist standpoint, if I can say, it has been, even spiritually, emotionally, financially, very difficult. It's been one of the areas that I advocate for behind the scene is now has forced me to talk about in the forefront, which is mental health. Mental health, man, is I thank God for, even in bad situations, the good that can come out of it, because we have more people, especially in African American culture, that's talking about mental health, and not from the aspect of being crazy or retarded. But I've always made a joke to people. I say, I don't think it should be an insult if someone calls you LD. I remember in school, and Rajon, you can understand this. When somebody would call us or say, "Oh, you LD," or "You at LD," we would take it as an insult. But being LD, or that two-letter acronym, I think is, Dr. Bell can correct me, for learning disability, which is a medical term. So really, when somebody call you LD, they don't understand that someone went to school for years and spent a lot of money to be able to diagnose you as a two-letter. And so I just thank God that, that every knee must bow, every tongue must confess. And if we didn't bow, we sure see that the world has, if I can say this, got bent over to realize we need to stop, get focused, and really challenge areas like mental health and financial stability, and some of the things that grandmama them didn't teach me. They taught me how to pray. They taught me even corporate prayer, but not even corporate America. And so this pandemic has forced us into learning that. I just thank God for, in spite of all the pain we went through.
Absolutely, absolutely. So well said. I just to reflect a little bit myself. I know I'm just a moderator, but I want to make sure that I also tune in on to chime in on this one aspect, because it's so important for us to recognize, one, we're Black men. Right? We gotta call a thing. We're Black men in a world that has changed miraculously in the last year in so many different aspects. We were locked into our homes, to a point where some of us were quarantined and could not leave our homes. Jobs that were gone, were happening in the workplace. You had to leave your home every day to go do these things. You had to leave your home to go to the store. You had to leave your home to get something to eat. You had to leave your home to go to church. And all of those things were taken away. And I'm so glad, Jarrell, that you mentioned the fact that it took a mental toll on all of us. Now we're sitting in our homes with our families, and Pastor Holt, you mentioned the role that it's taken on the family. For a lot of families, this is a great thing, being able to be in the home. I've been able to spend more time with my kids and help them with their homework more. And I have my office in one room, and they have their office, they have their school place in a different room. And so, I've been able to hear the conversation going on and make sure, hey, stay on task. But I also have to think about the other side, those families that don't have the privileges, that my family has, where they're crunched up into smaller spaces, where they may have not been able to go to work, and they've not been able to take advantage of certain privileges that we have, and we honestly, for most cases, have taken for granted up until we've realized during this time of COVID, that people have been losing jobs, people losing their minds, people losing their families, and families that have already had toxic environments. You're crammed into a space with them for elongated periods of time where you can't get away from them. So I think it's very important, as you said, Jarrell, that we all take this time to realize that if we made it, we're blessed to be here today. So I wanted to make sure we took that time to look back and say, thank God for bringing us this far. But let's talk about, what we've learned and where we go from here. So I guess I'll take it from there. And I want to come back to Jarrell because he's had a personal experience with the COVID scare, the COVID crisis, the COVID epidemic. I'd like that for him to talk about that, and I'll open it up to the panel.
Well, listen, I'm gonna get right into it. COVID, man, whew, and y'all just excuse me because it's a very emotional journey, mentally and physically, that like I said, you can never be trained for. No amount of education, schooling man, honestly, if I can say this and Pastor Holt lay hands on me later, I don't even think no amount of prayer this season could have, you know, kept us as stable as we wanted to be. You know, COVID for me personally started last March. We all heard. I can remember the date I was in Virginia, and the funny thing about it is, I was almost nervous. If I can, you know, plug a funny moment is, I'm scheduled to be back in the same place this coming Friday where I heard the news that COVID, you know, was declared, a national pandemic. That was in Virginia, and I was in concert with Pastor John P. Key. And I'll never forget, I was looking on the phone, and Pastor Key was on the stage, and we got the alert that we were declared to be in a pandemic. And of course, it was fresh, so we didn't know anything about social distancing and nothing like that. We were packed, me and him in concert. It's no room for air to get in that place. And so we got home back to South Carolina, and life as usual. At that time, I was not even a year into being a business owner. I owned a restaurant, Mama Pearl's Kitchen, Mountaindale, South Carolina. So I'm doing that, and I'm traveling, and I'm just, all over the place. I'm in the prayer room. I'm having a right to praise the Lord and telling him the Lord and make a way and all these different things, and then this pandemic comes, fast forward and into June. And somehow, I don't know, I'm a germaphobe. I'm a big piece of leather, but I'm all put together, if I can say it like that. I wash my hands. I wash off every day. So I just couldn't understand how this germ and even to be beat, Pastor Holt, Dr. Bell. I said, well, I got the Holy Ghost, so I ain't scared. No weapon formed against me. I'm quoting scripture. Never be defeated. I'm saying all of these different things that grandma then taught us in times like this, to really put God before this thing that was going to bring us to our knees. And June came, and I remember when I got my first set of, I guess, the symptoms. I was fine. I said, okay, well, so I can taste, I can smell, because that's all we focused on as far as watching the news. As long as I can taste, I can smell, I just got a cold. And so slowly but surely, my taste left. I still was speaking, no weapon formed against me. My smell left. I said, wow, okay, but I don't feel bad. I'm a little bit of chills, everything. I quarantined myself for about 11 days, but on that 12th day, it turned for the worse out of nowhere. It just went from chills and me resting and taking over-the-counter meds. The doctor called my doctor. He told me, don't even come in. He said, we don't have no room to even see you. We're going to just tell you what to do. Sounds like you got it. Just do this. Take Tylenol and take, I believe, Motrin at the same time. That's what he told me, and some other things. They said, we don't need to even come here because you're going to wait for hours. Did all of that, and the 12th day it turned for the worse. And so I just could not breathe. I just couldn't get it together. And I began to get nervous. And I remember June 26th, I went to a hospital facility. I won't say the name on here. And I was there for 10 minutes. They told me, sounds like you got corona. We're going to do an x-ray. And we think you got pneumonia. I never forget it. The doctor told me, he said, I think you got pneumonia. And he said, we're going to send you home with a I think it was called a Z-Pack. And they sent me home. I went to Walmart, couldn't breathe in the Walmart parking lot. We went to Walmart, got the medicine, and I went home. And I just went through the night miserably. And I said, well, when I got up June 27th that morning, and my sister was here, and she was just looking at me. She's like, I think you need to go back to the hospital. Now here, June 26th, I went to the hospital by EMS. So, you go by EMS, that's considered like stat. They see you right away. So I'm thinking, okay, well, they sent me home I guess I'm fine. I only have pneumonia. Who am I? I'm not going to challenge Dr. Bell because I didn't go to school. So I'm going to listen to what they say, you know. And June 27th, she said, I think you need to go. I think you need to go. I said, well, I'm not going. I said, they sent me home. They said I have pneumonia. I'm good. I just can't breathe, but I'll get over this, you know. We gonna keep, our sword in our hand, and we gonna fight on. And man, I'll never forget, she came and she brought me some chicken noodle soup, and she began to feed me. That was my only relief for about 5 minutes. And I said, thank you. And I still couldn't breathe. I slept in a chair that night before, sitting up in the office chair, because I didn't want to lay down. I was afraid I was going to leave here, because I just couldn't catch my breath, and I was trying not to make her afraid. So I said to her, I said, call the EMS. I'll never forget, when the EMS came in the room, they looked at me and they said to me, you got to go right now. I was able to get up. I had enough strength to walk, because I didn't want them to bring the stretcher through the house and fight, whatever the case may be. So I was able to get up, and I went outside. And the last thing I can remember is I dropped in front of the house, right in the stretcher, right in the stretcher. I have this bag by me. It's a very nice bag, but it's not here for a prop. This was what I had with me when I went to the hospital. This bag, I had everything in there. It was what I took. I had on a pair of shorts, a blue shirt, and this bag, and some slippers. This is the only thing that I was able to bring back. That's why I have this behind me, just as a reminder of what the Lord done for me. But I had this bag in front of me. I dropped in the stretcher, and I remember waking back up in the EMS. They said some code, and they rushed me to Roper St. Francis. I won't call their name because I love them. And they rushed me, and the next thing I can remember, and Dr. Bell can confirm this, and I'm only knowing this now because I actually went back to my doctor, some of the doctors I couldn't remember during that time, and I went back to thank them, and they shared with me some things that I was curious about because I couldn't remember. Well, I felt them drilling in my knee. And so from being passed out, I jumped up and I screamed, ah! And I was in a glass room with so many doctors around me. There were cords everywhere. And from what I'm being told was they drilled in my knee because they couldn't get an IV in my arm quick enough. So they go through the bone cavity, I believe, to get medicine into your stream or something like that. They were telling me there was some drill thing they went through my knee. I can still point to the spot. And when I jumped up, the only thing I can remember, Dr. Bell, is I saw a doctor over here, and he held up his hand. That was the last thing I remember. He held up his hand like we did up. I can remember that clear as day, like it's over. And the next thing I remember is waking up, and there was a doctor, a nurse Charles was his name, and he was rubbing my chest and waking me up. He was like, "Hey, Mr. Smalls, how you doing?" And I just looked at him. He said, don't talk. He said, I'm going to spray some Chloraseptic down your throat to help with your throat, but you're probably not going to be able to talk. And I couldn't remember anything. And I was just looking at him, and he said, do you know what day it is? And I just shake my head. He said, well, I'm going to tell you something. Don't be alarmed. He said, it's now July, whatever day it was. So, July? I went in the hospital in June. And he said, and another thing I want to tell you, he said, do you know where you are? I said, I don't know. And he said, well, you are now in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And I'm like, but I went in the hospital in West Ashley. So, I'm getting, irate, and, I begin to fight, I'll be honest with you, because I didn't know where I was. All I saw was some other colored people over me in suits. I went to, one of my arms was working, Reverend Hart, so they restrained me, they tied me up, and they had my, my feet tied or whatever, because I was tripping. I didn't know what was going on. And slowly but surely, they began to come and tell me what happened. And, lo and behold, I had been on the ventilator for 13 days. And they said if I had been on one more day, they would have had to track my throat. But they said that it was a very scary thing. I had a total of 3 PICC lines. I had 2 in my left arm pumping medicine to my heart, and 1 in my right pumping medicine to my heart. And it was touch and go for 12 full days. I was able to get the last ventilator the night of June 27th. in the state of South Carolina. Every hospital they checked, one came open in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And that night I came in, they incubated me. They said I woke up, yanked it out. Okay. They put it back in. They said I woke up again, yanked it back out. Okay. They tied me up. They said again, I forced it out with my tongue. So for 3 times I was fighting. My body was fighting to yank it out. They shipped some medicine and different things. They tried on me out of Texas. My family told them do whatever they have to do to make it. One of the other things I'm tie this all in that was frustrating was because of who I am. I sing just a little bit. Someone put it out that I was in the hospital. So when they did that, the word got out. People started calling the hospital to see had I passed. So my brother had to then, why a lot of people didn't know, he hurry up and made me what they call an informant patient and gave me a nickname in the hospital and a code. My nickname in the hospital, I was Charlie Brown. And you had to give a code in order to get information about me. But long story short, once I got up and got through, started looking better. They said on the 13th day, Reverend Holt, that they pulled me off the machine and I started breathing on my own. Every time they would pull me off, they tried it like 3 times. And every time, no, 2 times, and the 3rd time, I started breathing on my own all night. And from then on, once Nurse Charles woke me up, I went from, I think my oxygen was as low as 30%. But after they took me off the ventilator, to this day, I've never been back on oxygen. I've been breathing no less than 99% oxygen. My doctors were coming and running in the hospital. The doctors that dealt with me when it was the worst of the worst, they were coming to see me because they could not believe that I made it. There was one of the nurses that was there when I came in the hospital. He went on vacation. When he came back in, his name was Nurse Gary. He said, he came running and he said, they told me you live. He said, I don't want to scare you, but you had no lungs. I just knew you died. He took off this Invicta watch, this watch right here. He gave it to me. He said, I got to give you something and let you know that you a miracle. He said, I don't want to make you afraid, but there was nothing medically that we could have thought about doing to you that you should be alive today. And he said, I just want you to, we heard you were a singer, and we want you to go and sing and tell the whole world that you are a miracle. And that's just to sum it up. I can get it even deeper, but I tell you, I just want to encourage everybody that's listening that, I was even afraid to testify this because I said, so many people died. And God, why did you let me live? But I just thank God that my life is not an accident. I'm alive because there's more. And I just praise God for it. I was like, I don't want to insult people. I don't want to make people feel like I'm boasting. But, I just tell people all the time, that I understand where they were, but I need you to understand where I am, that I can't sit down and not tell it. I got to tell of what God done for me because I went back to my doctors. I'm going to hurry this up. And the main doctor, Dr. Thompson, who made the call of the calls, when I went back to thank him, he said, nobody that he can think of. Roper's Hospital in a whole had 3 major moments that they can't understand. That's spooky. That's the word he said to them. And he said, out of the 3 major COVID moments, I'm one of them who lived and survived. And he said, nobody has never came back to tell them thank you. But he told me that because I came back and tell him and the staff, thank you, that my life will forever be blessed, man. And so, that's what God did for me.
Wow. Quite a testimony. Thank you so much for sharing that. I thank God that you're here today to be able to tell your story because, though this is our first time, meeting formally, I've been able to witness, your testimony and your gospel, the way you deliver the gospel. And that's why I mentioned that in the opening. I do believe that God has a special calling in your life. I'm not anybody's pastor or prophet or anything like that, but it's all over you. And it's not hard to tell, the things that God is going through you. And I can't wait to see what you do with the time that God has given you in the future. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So I want to open it up now. I know I saw a few questions in the audience. Please, if you could, I would ask that you please use the Q&A portion so we can make sure we're getting to your questions. But I do want to make sure that I get to the panelists so that they can really open up and we can talk about this thing, because COVID has so many different tentacles, and we want to make sure that we're also getting to talking about the solutions and getting to the vaccine as well. So, Dr. Bell, from a research standpoint, how has the Black community and and disadvantaged communities been more disproportionately affected by this COVID epidemic?
Well, that's an excellent question, and we know that the African American community, people of color, and impoverished people have bared a greater burden of disease as it relates to COVID than any other group of people. We die at 2.9 to 3 times as much as any other group of people who get COVID. And the reason for that is because we have more pre-existing conditions that predisposes us to the COVID vaccine. And it has taken the entire year for us to really appreciate what those pre-existing conditions are. Tomorrow, I'm going to be giving a talk to the American Heart Association, and I'm going to be pointing out to them that the pre-existing conditions for COVID, number one, is a history of hypertension that has developed into heart disease, diabetes, obesity, COPD, smoking. Those are the big conditions that predisposes us to having a poor outcome if we get exposed to COVID.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. And as you mentioned, those pre-existing conditions. We often think to ourselves, well, we're doing so well. There's no reason this should be impacting me, but we do have to look at those things that we're already predisposed to, as a people, just through our eating habits, through our life choices that would make us more, susceptible to those things.
Right.
I remember when the COVID epidemic actually first started and no Black people had died yet. So the people were saying, well, Black people can't get it. And that was like the first month of it. I was like, this isn't going to work out the way you think it is. So that was a whole other thing for another day. But thank you for making the time, making that correlation between pre-existing conditions and the COVID epidemic.
The other thing that I want to mention are also some of the social determinants of health that have also put African Americans in a place where they were more likely to get the virus, the kinds of jobs that African Americans have had to have in order to take care of their families, the kind of conditions that we have had to work in, the lack of working in a good environment. All of those kinds of things have made a contribution to the morbidity and mortality that African Americans have experienced as it relates to COVID. We begin to recognize it. Actually, we begin to recognize it very early. If you will remember, and it wasn't very well reported, but a large number of Black folk were getting COVID who lived in Detroit, certain parts of Wisconsin, Chicago, San Francisco, Atlanta, New Orleans. Now, what's the common thread that runs through all of those places that I mentioned?
High Black population.
Black people.
Yep.
Black people. And so we began to then study to find out, well, why was that the case? And one final thing I wanna make sure people understand. There haven't been in the history of medicine very often where we actually get a chance to see a disease in real time. In other words, COVID came on the scene and we knew nothing about this virus. So we had to learn how to treat people as we went along. And it is still that way. That's why every day you turn on the news, something changes. So just keep in mind that we are actually seeing a medical condition in real time that's changing. I've been fortunate enough in my career to see 3 major conditions like that: Ebola, HIV, and now COVID.
Wow, you really just wrapped that all up for real. So let's now that we mentioned that, we've talked about the virus, the causes thereof, and how it's impacted us. Let's start talking about this vaccine, because that's really the talk of the day and what's going on with that. And we'll definitely be able to come back to Dr. Holt very, very soon to make sure we want to make sure we involve you in the discussion as well, Dr. Holt. So thank you so much for being so patient in this discussion. Dr. Bell, so the first question I want to ask you is, because one big piece of discussion is surrounding 2 things. One, the quickness with which the vaccine has seemed to come out. There's a lot of people that have questions about the amount of testing that may have gone into the vaccine before it was put out there. And the second thing that I would like you to describe is the difference between the Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and the third vaccine, which I can't remember. But if you could just talk about those things, I'd really appreciate it.
All right, well, let's take your first question. The quickness that the vaccine came on the scene. I want you just try to remember that when the World Health Organization declared the situation that we were in a pandemic, and when it started taking the lives of large numbers of people, the world medical community came together and focused all of their efforts on coming up with a way to deal with it. Even before that time, however, there was already a plethora of information being developed as it related to the vaccines that had already started with, as a result of us having HIV. Some of the principles that we were learning, we had already learned, okay? And so when the virus began to take the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, the World Medical Association, for lack of a better term, came together and began to focus on coming up with more information. So it may have appeared as though we made the vaccine very, very fast, when in fact, 10 years had already passed and a lot of information had already been gathered. And now people who were competing against one another, we all had one single goal in mind, and that was to save lives. The past administration didn't do a whole lot of things good. Most things they didn't do good. But if you give them credit for anything, they did focus the scientists and they put the necessary funds in to be able to come up with this vaccine. And so just keep in mind that it may have appeared. I always tell people, it's kind of like if you remember when cell phones came on the scene, all right, well, a whole lot of research and technology had been done. Then all of a sudden, bam, we had the cell phone, okay? And that's the way it was with the vaccine as well. The other thing that I want people to remember is that a lot of African-American brilliant scientists who were of African American descent, other immigrants from around the world, also played a major role in making the vaccine a reality. So that should give you some comfort to know that a lot of people came together at a time when we needed to come together and at the speed that we needed to have done it. And a lot of money was put into the development of this vaccine. So that's pretty much the answer to that question.
Yes, sir. And then the difference between the three, the Johnson.
The difference between the three. Right now we have three and we have a fourth one on the horizon. I'll talk about that too. We have the Pfizer, we have the Moderna, and we have the Johnson & Johnson. The Pfizer came out first. It was approved by the FDA. It takes 2 shots for the Pfizer. The first shot is given, and then 3 weeks later, the second shot is given. The Moderna came out secondly. It also is 2 shots, and you have to take the second shot after 28 days. Then we have the Johnson & Johnson, which is the game changer, and which is the one that most people are gravitating toward because it's a one-shot deal. 1 shot and you're done. But the efficacy of all 3 of them is basically the same. Now we have another one made by AstraZeneca. You may have noticed that within the past 48 hours, it was taken off of the market over in Europe because out of 17 million doses that they gave, about 30 people had blood clots. They had given it to 17 million, 30 people had blood clots. So they took it off the market and they have studied it and they're continuing to study it to make sure that the side effect of blood clots is not real. But already some interesting data has been done to show that when they compared the number of blood clots in the natural population without people who were having the vaccine, it was really no different from people who were getting the vaccine. Nevertheless, the FDA and the people over in Europe have pulled it, and they're going to study it closer to make sure that it is 100%, close to 100% safe. Finally, I want to mention out of the 3 that they are currently giving, we can say up to date that no one who has gotten the vaccine has died from COVID. If they got the vaccine and if the 2 weeks that was required for them to get an immune response, if that 2 weeks was allowed to take place, then no one has died from COVID. Now, they may have died, but they didn't die from COVID. And so that's what I want to remind the public. It appears as though the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, it appears as though based on what I was told as recently as yesterday by Dr. Aretha Jones, who is the CEO of Franklin C. Fetter. I was asking her last night about the Johnson & Johnson, and she was telling me it appears as though the Johnson & Johnson is proving to be, out of the 3, the vaccine of choice, particularly of African-American men, because it's a one and done, okay? And by the way, the side effect profile for all 3 of them is basically the same and is basically very, very low. I have already had the vaccine. I think Pastor Holt has already had the vaccine, and I didn't experience any side effects whatsoever. And I think I follow Pastor Holt on Facebook, and I don't recall him saying anything about it. He can speak for himself. Pastor, did you experience any side effects?
Sorry about that. No, sir, I had no side effects whatsoever. I had a little sore arm after the first one, but the second one, which they said would be worse, I had nothing. And I'm fully, I get a lot of questions. If I can just interject, people ask me, come to me, Pastor, well, should I take the vaccine? And Dr. Bell hit it right on the head. You know, I looked up some of the main reasons. People said it's 4 reasons: African American, too risky, don't trust it, I don't need it, I'm too young, like some of you guys on here. I'm too young and healthy. That's for old people. I don't have any underlying conditions, but all of those can be debunked by the number of deaths and the ages that are in the hospital. But one reason I explained to them that it came out so quickly, as he was saying, the EUA, emergency use authorization, is basically there are three phases to approving a vaccine. And the thing about this, he said, from ACE, all the ingredients in the vaccine have already been approved not to have any lingering long-term effects. So what's in it is approved. So the only thing that was left was to prove that it was safe to use against, that it was effective against the virus. And they proved phase 1, they proved phase 2. I think they have like 40, still have 40 different case studies of people who took it 7 months before it hit the market. And the only thing the emergency use authorization did was waive that final year and 5 months that they would observe people. So everything in the vaccine has already been approved. We have over, I think, 20 vaccines that are now being used to fight world viruses, and they are effective. And everything they, like you said, they had already made so much progress in the AIDS vaccine that almost 75% of what's in this one was used effectively against that one, with over, I guess, 10 years of no side effects. And one thing I promoted, I've always promoted, and I'm seeing it on the level I am, that Blacks are becoming to accept they need to get it. And what we are trying to push now, we are people that we just feel more comfortable bringing the vaccine to our community. That's where you get standing room only. I think yesterday people were turned away. And I hate to see where it get to the point where it's almost now that it becomes scarce, and we on the tail end of trying to get somewhere. You know, when you get millions and more people allowed to get it, and we still procrastinating. And the latest statistics of today, only in South Carolina, only 16% of African Americans in South Carolina, 60% of those vaccinated are Black, but 32% of those dead are Black, and 24% of those who've been tested positive are Black. So we only got 16% who've been vaccinated, you know, of the 16% of all vaccinations in South Carolina. So that means 84% been white and others. But we got 1/3 of the deaths. Now, when those 84% become fully vaccinated, and we still have 84% of our people not vaccinated, we're gonna end up having 60 to 70% of the deaths. And we need to look at what this whole thing is about, looking at the facts. And I was one of those, Rashawn, that when it first came out, people saying, you know, Blacks can't get it, you know, it ain't getting nobody but white people. And that's how urban legends start. It was out there. It was out there. The people who told me that, they said nothing since people started dying. But we have to realize that the vaccine we take, look here, I'm older than most of you. I done put so much stuff in my mouth and everywhere else that I'm still here. If God go let me go somewhere, I would have been gone. If you want to worry about stuff, I thought Dr. Bell was going to talk about the fried chicken Talking about what all these cities got in common. I was going to say chicken spots. But really the fact is, we focus on that. And we really want to focus on something. We need to focus on things that we know are doing us wrong and killing us. But this vaccine is deadly. Jarrell, thank you, man. Everybody couldn't tell that story like you did, man. God, I mean, you said it all. There's more. You're still alive because there's more, man. And to hear your voice as strong as it is now, after what you've been through, that's a miracle. That don't happen. That don't happen, Doc. So we know God wants us to survive. And I ask you to pray about it, but I know God wants you to be healthy and prosper. And we prayed for God to move this plague. We prayed for God to bring healing. And God sometimes just won't heal you in your sleep. You got to do something in faith. Faith got to conquer your fear. When the children of Israel were in the wilderness and they were being affected by snake bites, God did something weird. He said, put a snake up on a pole, and everybody who look at it gonna be healed. Now people say, I ain't looking at no pole, I ain't, man, what sense that make? But look here, if God did it, I believe God is doing this to heal, the answer to our prayer. I've taken it, no side effects. It lifts a burden off your mental health. And maybe that's a whole nother subject for some mental experts. But let me tell you something. I think it's Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs. After you get past physical need, and after you get past safety need, then a person, what we experienced in 1 year, one of the basic needs of a human being is groupings and being among, it's called love and belonging.
Yes, sir.
And that's a basic need. We've been a year without that, and we don't know what the effects of it will be when we come out. So everybody needs to do some little simple mental health checks, and make sure you're not thinking, because sometimes we the last one know that we kind of different. So I want to encourage everyone to pray about it and hear our testimony about this vaccine. I believe God has given it to us, and we cannot be procrastinating. Aretha is working great with FEDA. FEDA is in the community, and they are making a statement. They are outdoing some of the people that have the bigger facilities because they're coming in our community. And we did it at Royal twice. And I was there to watch those elderly people, many of them on walkers, people catching cabs. They want the vaccine, but it's just sick. We're not going to the fancy places. They're not catching rides out to the airport. They're not going to the gear yard. That's a certain segment of our people. But if you bring it in the community and have medical people that look like Dr. Bell, I just have to put it like that. That's where the trust level gets better. You see what I'm saying? They need people that can help them fill out the little 8-question thing. And the numbers will come out. And 16% of all this vaccination, we only got 16%. And I think we at least over a third, Dr. Bell may know better, we were probably over a third of state population or more. They only have 16% of the vaccines that have been given out yet, especially for the older people. That speaks very bad about if another surge come in, it's gonna hit us harder.
We represent about 27% of the population of South Carolina, but we represent about 45% of the total deaths from COVID.
Oh, it's 45. Wow.
Yeah. So
wow.
It's really high. And one other thing, Pastor, excellent job, by the way, of explaining that. The thing that I want to make people aware of is that the vaccine does not have a live or dead virus. The vaccine has a protein that has been developed by the scientists to actually trick the body in thinking that when they give you the injection, there is a virus, but it really is not. It's just a protein. And so your body begins to immediately build up an immune system. In fact, Pastor, the symptoms that people get when right after they get the vaccine, that really is not a side effect. That really is your body revving itself up because something has been introduced to it.
That's a good thing.
I'm going to get ready to attack this thing that has been injected. And so when you get the second one, it's kind of like a booster. All right. And that's why people get even a few more quote unquote side effects that within 24 hours goes away. So all three of the vaccines will do that. So you can consider that to be a normal, that's normal. Almost consider the side effects that you're going to get is normal. That's your body letting you know that, hey, I'm getting ready. So if this thing comes into my environment, I'm ready. I got the necessary ingredients is to attack it and take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And again, yes, Pastor Holt, I am sort of taken back at your institutional knowledge when it comes to COVID. Dr. Bell, you might be looking to hire somebody to be your on-call specialist when it comes to talking about this. I definitely thank you for that. I wanted to ask this question, and I want to make sure, because we're at 7:06 now, so we're about an hour and 6 minutes in, and I don't want to extend the time too far. But I do want to talk about a couple of things before we get out of here and make sure I answer some of these questions. The first question I wanted to ask was related to one that's in the chat room, and it's about why is there only one shot for Johnson & Johnson as opposed to two? Is there a specific reason for that?
Well, thank goodness it is. The scientists over at Johnson & Johnson were able to develop a vaccine that required one shot. That's the best answer that I can give you. The one shot seems to work. People have to remember that when they developed the one shot, they tested the one shot throughout the entire world, whereas Pfizer and Moderna only tested their shots in the United States. So it gave the impression throughout the entire world that the efficacy wasn't as great, but we think and feel fairly certain that all three vaccines will give you the right kind of protection. By the way, most of the time, you will not have the privilege of choosing. So if you go and they say, hey, we don't have no more Johnson & Johnson, but you can get the Moderna, get it.
Yes.
Get it. And then arrange your schedule to come back so that you can get the second part. But fortunately enough, the Federal Network has been able to get the Johnson & Johnson, and the Johnson & Johnson, based on what I've been told, appears to be the more popular one, particularly among African-American men. I've been told that African-American men like the one and done deal.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you for that clarification as well about being able to identify which places have which vaccines. I wanted to speak a little bit. I want to ask you also about the distrust, right? So we know the history of African Americans in our country when it comes to the medical system and the misdeeds that were done. But I do want to speak about one misnomer in terms of the Tuskegee experiment that a lot of people really don't completely understand. A lot of people think that Black people were given syphilis in the Tuskegee experiment. That's not the case. Could you speak to that, Dr. Bell?
Yes, excellent point. And I'll try to be brief. In Macon County, Alabama, during the late 20s and early 30s, the prevalence of syphilis was very high in the entire county and very high among African Americans. I want you to keep in mind, Black folk were not given medical treatment in 1926 like white folks were given treatment, okay? And so when the United States Public Health Service found out that the prevalence of syphilis was very high in African Americans, syphilis was the #1 disease, pretty much like COVID is right now, but syphilis was the #1 disease of its time. And the medical profession did not understand how syphilis grew and the various stages of syphilis. So when they found out that the prevalence of it was very high in African American men, they went to Macon County, Alabama. And by the way, I need to let folk know that Tuskegee Institute didn't have anything to do with the Tuskegee experiments. They had, let me repeat that, they had nothing to do with it, all right? It was given that name because it was in Tuskegee, but the experiment was perpetrated on Black folk, in which these doctors told about 600 Black men that they were going to get treatment for the bad blood. That's what they called it back during that day, the bad blood. And so what these Black men did not know is that, by the way, the 600 Black men that had syphilis, about 300 of them didn't have it, and 300 did have it, okay? And so what they did is they compared how they did. And during a period of from 1932 until 1972, by the way, Pastor, 1972 was the year that I started medical school. So that's when the experiments ended. But during that period of time, about a dozen of these Black men passed away from the complications of syphilis. But even as bad, a lot of these men gave syphilis to their wives, and then their wives had children that had complications. Now, here's the other horrific thing about it. In about 1945, penicillin was discovered. And penicillin was found to be the antibiotic that would cure syphilis, actually cure it. But these Black men were not told that about penicillin, and they were not given penicillin. They just continued to watch how the bacterium, by the way, syphilis is a bacterium, it's not a virus, and they continued to watch how it destroyed the lives of these Black men. And then finally, when Bill Clinton became the president, he did make an apology to these Black men and their families, and he gave restitution to them and had them all at the White House. I think about 8 of them were still living during that period of time. And what they have done since that time is they have gone back to see how this horrific experimentation has had an effect on the families of these people. I saw a documentary on it about a month ago, and it's very interesting. But that's to kind of give you the nuances of what happened.
Thank you so much. I knew you could tell that story much better than I could, but the brief overview, the thing that I really wanted to make sure that people who are watching take away from this in terms of the distrust was people say, I don't want to get the vaccine because during the Tuskegee experiment, Black men were given syphilis. And that is absolutely not the case. Dr. Holt, please.
And I was going to say, and I think he's still in office, Dr. Bell, the United States Surgeon General. It was a Black man. And I heard him give a testimony that I did not know, that the Surgeon General of the United States during that time
Yes.
was overseeing the whole project. And this black Surgeon General who's there now, you saw him a lot when Trump was in, the black guy that was wearing the uniform. He said he walks into his building every day, and he cries almost every time he looks at that white man's picture up on that wall who oversaw the Tuskegee experiment. But now we have an African American who's the Surgeon General of the United States of America, and also an African American female who was the lead scientist for the Moderna vaccine.
Right. And as a footnote to what you have said, Pastor, you're absolutely right. A building was named after the Surgeon General who oversaw the Tuskegee experiments up in Pittsburgh. And they have since taken his name off of the building and changed the name since that happened. So yes, but you are absolutely right about that.
Thank you all so much. So this is a fire conversation. Like, just the information is being put out here, the wealth of knowledge. I didn't tell Dr. Bell I'd be asking that question, but he was ready to go. Dr. Holt had to piggyback. Oh, we on point. I love it. I love it. With that being said, I have not taken the vaccine yet, but I anticipate taking it as soon as I am available, as soon as I can take it. I wanted to ask Mr. Smalls, what are your thoughts about taking the vaccine?
I'm going to take it. I mean, even if I had doubt, after such education from these two giant of knowledgeable men, I am definitely going to take it. I'm scheduled to get it in the next couple of days, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan. But I know that I've been made a promise that the gap should be bridged. I'll just say it like that. But I want to say this to those of you that's on listening, that me or Rajan who have not been vaccinated. I'm just speak for me. I'm educated, don't get me wrong, but I come from the common sense era of things. Like, I just think black. I ain't just black. I also think black. And I said to somebody, even before this wealth of knowledge, I said, well, I took Tylenol. I took Advil. I said, if I grow another arm, that's more to wave. If I grow another leg, I can walk even harder. You understand? And I said, we gotta realize in our culture, sometimes we ask questions that can be kind of ignorance. And the reason why I said it is because if we can trust a medicine that has on the bottle and telling us what it's gonna do, it's gonna make you dizzy. You're gonna fall asleep. Don't do this. Why? Don't operate this, that, and the third. And it's one of the go-to medicines you've been taking for now years, every day. And you go and pay for that medicine that's telling you the risk is this. You might bleed to death. You might, and for years, but you're going to have questions about something that's free, that's not telling you you're going to die, that all you're going to have a side effect. You can't cure death, but you can sure get your arm removed if you grow another one. You can, if you get 4 eyes, you can, put a patch on 2, and that's just a common sense thing that my take from it. Once either this bridges gap or I able to get it from an appointment I already got, I'm taking it. It's going in either one of these arms. If I grow another one, I'll get another one.
Absolutely. And I saw we had a question, a poll question that just went up. Please make sure if these poll questions come up, please make sure you answer them. I believe it's have you taken the vaccine? Do you plan on taking the vaccine if you haven't already? And if are you of the mindset that you've not taken it, you're not going to take it? And I believe we have one other poll. I don't know if it's going to tie in, so I want to make sure I go ahead and do that. Dr. Holt, the people of the church want to know the big question. They say, hey, this vaccine's out here. When are we opening the doors of the church? Because we miss you. What can you tell them?
Keep your card in your hand and press O. Listen. I'm a student I'm a student of the numbers. I'm a follower of the CDC guidelines. We are preparing right now. I don't want to give a date because still, we need to see a trend. We need to see the trend manifest itself. We're going to this spring break time, and people got that stimmy check, and people, might cancel their shot just to go shopping or something. So we don't want these numbers to go up. But I'm doing everything out of safety. If I make an error, it's going to be on safety. But I am personally, and I don't know who asked that question. That kind of put who's screening them things. I'm really looking within the next month. What's this? Within the next month, I'm looking for a soft, limited RSVP trial run using all CDC guidelines of a small attendance to see how it goes. We've already started doing small for funerals in our gymnasium. We've installed air purification systems in all of our units, the same ones they use in the hospital, that actually changes out the air every 30 minutes in the building. We have the backpacks that they use in the school system, the spray sanitize everything. We have hand sanitizers all around. So right now we're finalizing the plans, and I don't want to announce it tonight because I already told the Lord I'm gonna announce it Sunday. So,
but look at us.
We are closer now than we ever been.
All right. Well, look at us getting a preview. See, y'all tuned in tonight. You thought you were just getting information. You're getting confirmation. Come on.
Right. Hot off the press, breaking news.
Yeah. Run tell that. No, don't tell nobody. Don't tell nobody.
All right, Dr. Bell, another question for you. Is this something that people are going to have to get annually, the vaccine, or is it something that once they get it, they're good to go?
We don't know the answer to that question yet. Keep in mind that as the information comes in, we'll be able to tell you more 3 months from now. It may be that the first shot will give you protection for this year, but as a result of all of the variants that are coming on the scene, it very well may mean that you may have to have a booster or another shot, just like you have another shot for the flu. I want to also take the opportunity to let you know about our I Got It campaign. That's a campaign that's being started by Closing the Gap in Healthcare. And we are you're going to be hearing more about that. You'll see that I have an I Got It sticker, and we want you to wear the sticker, and we want you to help promote the I Got It campaign by wearing the sticker to let people know that you got the vaccine, because you are walking testimony. Because when people know that that you did it, they are probably going to ask you questions about it, and you will be able to give them the reason that you got the vaccine. So I want to let you know that we will be giving out these I Got It stickers, and you're going to be hearing more about the I Got It campaign as we move forward. I want to tell an interesting, one of the things, Pastor Holt, in my office, I see it all. Over the past 45 years of my practice in medicine, 99.9% of my patients are African Americans. So the other day, Pastor, brother walked into my office. By the way, this is a joke. Brother walked into my office and he said, Doc, he said, I don't know about this vaccine, but he said, I tell you what I'm going to do. I noticed that a lot of people coming over, a lot of white people coming over to Royal Church. He said, I'm going to get behind a white lady and I'm going to watch her take that vaccine. And then I'm going to ask that they give me my shot out of that same vial that they gave that white lady her shot. And I'll feel mighty good after that. So if that's what it takes, Pastor, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. So we want to make sure, on a serious note, we want to encourage people to take the vaccine. It does save lives. I want to remind young people that young people have died from COVID as well. Let me repeat that. Young people have died from COVID as well. And so when you get the opportunity to take the vaccine, if you're a young person, please do it, because the more people that take the vaccine, the quicker we'll get to this phenomenon that is referred to as herd immunity. I don't know whether or not you've heard that term before, but what that simply means is that if we can get 80% of the population to take the vaccine, then the pastor will have good reasons to be able to open up the church, because if 80% of the people in the church have already had the vaccine, then there's a likelihood that anyone who has who comes in contact with the disease, they will be less likely to infect other people. So the herd immunity phenomenon is very, very real, and is something that we should really work toward getting.
One final question, and then we'll get to parting shots. Again, coming back to Dr. Bell, once you have gotten the vaccine, what does that allow you to be able to do? Should you now just stop wearing a mask, or how does that work?
That's an excellent question. Let's just say that you and your wife got the vaccine. Okay, that means that now you are able to receive your grandchildren. You are less likely to get COVID from them or give COVID to them. If they are healthy and they come into your space, you don't have to worry about getting the disease from them. So the vaccine does give you a veil of protection. But with that being said, it does not give you a license to start traveling all over the country. It does not give you a license to not continue to practice the preventive measures that you have heard so much about, with reference to washing your hands, wearing your mask, practicing social distancing. You heard the pastor mention that they have spent a tremendous amount of tremendous effort improving the ventilation system. We know that when the ventilation system is improved, the likelihood of getting infected from the virus goes significantly down. So that's a good thing. So we're going to encourage people to continue doing and washing your hands, to continue doing all of the things that you were doing prior to getting the vaccine. But the vaccine does provide an element of protection. And so now you'll be able to see if, let's just say that that you and your wife have gotten the vaccine, and 2 or 3 of your friends or 4 of your friends have gotten the vaccine, then that means that you can come over to their house, they can go over to your house, all y'all have had the vaccine. So the likelihood that you're going to be able to pass that infection between the 2 of you has decreased significantly because you have gotten the vaccine. So there are going to be some things that you're going to be able to do, but you're going to have to continue to do the recommendations that the CDC continues to recommend as we continue to learn more and more about this virus.
Thank you so much for that. I really want to make sure that we got that in there. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get to the parting thoughts. I'll start with Mr. Jarrell Smalls. Please, what are your parting thoughts on this discussion that we've had this evening?
Man, it has been an amazing discussion. I thank you all once again, Pastor Holt and the Royal Foundation, who is more than enough showed themselves to be the foundation of, not just the Liberty Hill community, but the community of the body of believers. Reverend Holt is not my physical pastor, but has been a pastor to me. Down to the years, have always extended his arms to me, just like a member, man. If I can say this, Reverend Holt message in more than one way was one of the first things I saw coming back to my mental capacity, getting out of the hospital. He sent spiritual and physical blessings. You understand what I'm saying? And one of the reasons I think I got my strength back, is because of prayers like him. Dr. Thaddeus Bell has bridged the gap for our community beyond billboards and slogans, but actually a doctor for the people. And to be able to even vocally on this panel say aloud and not ashamed of it that 99.9% of his patients are African American is a stance that a lot of doctors in this caliber don't take, because they want the other money. You know what I'm saying? But I just thank God that this pandemic has allowed all of us to be not just weak, but strengthened us after being weak. And Dr. Bell now have everybody and patients that may not have been concerned with their physical health now wanting to find out how they can become his patient. People who didn't care about coming to church now going to be stalking Reverend Holt's page to find out when he going to release that date to come back in. You understand what I'm saying? All of us who didn't have certain cares in the world, now care. And so I just thank God, not that he just allowed me to live, but to be a beacon of light and a testimony that even though it was a very dark moment, I died multiple times. I thought it was 3, but they told me it was way more than 3. I was out of here. I'm talking cold and gone. But the fact that he breathed life in my body, and to be able to share this as a 35-year-old Black African American man, watch this, who's not in the healthiest of state. I'm still getting there. I'm in all of the categories of death. You understand? But I am here to tell you that my faith remains strong, and I have a strong family. I have a covenant mother, and people who went on their knees in the midst of the diversity and the challenges that I have. And another thing that I believe he did for me, and I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna be quiet because I feel the Holy Ghost, is that I believe being a good person and not just being an artist and just singing, but being somebody who's not just in the limelight, but really shining the light and trying to live right. I believe that I put enough money in my overdraft protection that when I wrote the check of death and didn't have the money to finance coming out, that my overdraft protection put the funds in the account and he paid the debt for me. And that's all I got to say. Thank you for having me. And I dropped the mic on that note, like Obama.
See, this is why you can't let ministers just close out the show. All right, now, Dr. Bell, I gotta come to you. I know I don't need you to do what you do.
I'm going to be brief. I want to first thank Reverend Holt and the Royal Foundation for allowing me to be on this platform with these two gentlemen. It's truly been a pleasure. I also want to remind the community that we do need more African-American healthcare providers. We need more African-American doctors. We need more Black nurses. We need more Blacks in health, in administration. We need more Blacks in all phases of the healthcare profession. So I'm hoping that some young man or some young woman will pick up the banner and get inspired and want to be a physician, want to be a nurse, want to be a physical therapist, want to be a dentist. I hope that this will encourage them to want to do something like this. And so I'd just like to say thank you very, very much. again for allowing me to have this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. Greatly appreciate you. Absolutely right. Angel in this house, man of the hour, Pastor Holt, please. Parting thoughts.
Thank you, Rajon. Thank you, man. You have done an awesome. I'm so encouraged by this next generation, which is the now generation, really, for the things that you are doing. Sometimes we could look at all the negative, but there's a lot of you guys, and I believe, as I think Jarrell said, something good is going to come out of this. I jokingly said, Dr. Bell, that I miss everybody in the church, even the ones I don't like. I mean, I just wonder how they do it, man. It just ain't the same. You got to have a mixture. You got to have a mixture of things in your church. And I'm just hug everybody when I get back. I just miss them. And we learn in these situations, it's the small things that are so important that we just take for granted. As I know, Jeff, even health. Dr. Bell, I know we just take it for granted till it's gone. And we need to learn to take better care of ourselves. I'm learning that. And Dr. Bell, I want to thank you for being a part of this tonight. You have helped me tremendously in being able to intelligently discuss these things that you just speak from the top of your head. That's the reason you're still here. And I tell people, you're not just a doctor, you're the community doctor. I told you that.
Yeah.
Because you had Closing the Gap way back on the AM black radio station when people didn't even know it was a gap, So who is this guy talking about? And he was fancy with it too, Closing the Gap of Dr. Bell. I said, who is this? And I met him, and he's not just in his office, he's in the community. He used to come to Royal, just pop up all the time, just to get around. And I see him at different events. So man, thank you, man. And I know you're mentoring a lot of young health professionals. So we want to thank you, and we pray your strength and your health. And Jarrell, I love you, man. Man, you got a future. God gonna fully heal you. I totally believe it. And what would the church be if he allowed us to avoid, if there was no testimonies in the church? If everybody could just say, join the church and things will be right. But our life and your mother, my grandmama, and them, they were who they were because of what they've been through and survived. And God always chooses a remnant to survive it, so you can tell who brought you out. Yep. And God has chosen you to do that, man. And I bless you. I love you. And I would just say to anybody, I think one of the things we got to look forward to, this refers to Rashawn too. Me and Dr. Bell, our professional careers kind of really didn't take a huge hit. Financially, I would just go out there and say, not doing this, but a lot of our young people are entrepreneurs. We lost over half. The caterers, the barbershops, the hair salons, and a lot of times the banks were not equally as fair with our small businesses, because the truth about it, we didn't have CPAs and all of that working. We just, we were just working every day, making a living. And when the quarantine came, a lot of those are now really suffering. And I look at Jarrell, and I just say, let us support him. We got to support him. I mean, he was representing us all over the country, and it was still growing and getting bigger. And he had people going with him as musicians and singers, helping putting food on their family's table. And he had opened a business, entrepreneur. He lost all of that. He ain't, records ain't going now. People ain't coming to concerts. So, I'm sure he got a cash app somewhere. He ain't asked for all this, but really, if you know his story, sow a seed. I mean, I'm just saying, if you're led, sow a seed or buy a CD, one or the other, but because we got to help one another. We got to remember how we made our ancestors helped each other. If somebody killed a hog, my grandmama sent me down the street asking people that need some meat. I didn't understand it then. I said, yeah, I need some meat, but she knew that if she give them some, next time I had to go pick up some. So we got to get back to that. And Jarrell, I appreciate you, man. Continue to tell your story through your voice, whatever God opens up for you. So we love you. And thank you, Rashawn, again, once again, man. You was excellent. Excellent guy. Excellent. Appreciate you.
Praise God. I guess I'll give my parting thoughts too, just very briefly. I just want to thank each of you for your candor this evening, your professionalism, and for the way you delivered the message in a way that speaks to the people as opposed to over the people. A lot of times we have these discussions in a way that people can't get it. And one thing I want to say, as someone who does operate in the media sphere, though I don't consider myself a full-time journalist or anything of that nature, Dr. Bell, I can remember your show coming on the radio. I can remember the commercial breaks and hearing, that Dr. Thaddeus Bell, Bridging the Gap. I can remember that. And as I've done my show, Real Talk with Rajan, which I do weekly, I have that as an inspiration. That's something that's inspired me as I've gone through my journey. I'm not syndicated, like that, but in my own way, I definitely do channel the people like you, Dr. Bell. Pastor Hope, I visited Royal Missionary Baptist Church, and every time I've ever come into that building, I felt at home as though I was a member. And I've loved the spirit and the warmth with which your church carries, and that is clearly indicative of the leadership of that church. So I want to thank you for that tonight. Jarrell, I want to thank you for your story and for your transparency through it, man, because people are going to be healed. There are going to be people who are going to get this vaccine. There are people that are going to look at this thing differently because you take the time to talk about the story. You don't bury it. You don't make it this thing that happened to you, but you realize it's something that God is doing for you to be a ministry and a testimony to large people. And because of that, you will be forever blessed. And I can't wait to see what happens for you again in the future. Like I said before, I want to thank everybody who's watched this evening. I hope this has been a meaningful and worthwhile discussion that you guys will watch again and again and again to get those key nuggets of information, because I'm pretty sure there's some stuff in there that you could probably pull out that maybe you went to the kitchen to get something or ran to the bathroom. Listen to it again. Listen to the words that have been said here in this panel. They're so important. It's so important. Make sure you get that sticker, the I Got It sticker. I can't wait to get mine. Once I get my vaccine, I'm going to get it just like I had my I Voted sticker. I will have my post with I Got It on there so everybody will know that I got it. Please make sure that if you haven't already, Jarrell, they asked you for your Cash App in there, so put that in the comment section so they can have that, so they can sow a seed into your ministry, into your life. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you to the Royal Foundation. Thank you to Royal Missionary Baptist Church. Thank you to Closing the Gap in Healthcare. And thank you to everybody who took the time to watch tonight. I hope you all are blessed and highly favored going forward. Remember that God is with you. And if God is with you, who can stand against you? Y'all have a great night.